My child, stop for a moment. Do not move away from this message, because what I am about to tell you cannot wait. I need your attention now, not later, not after you finish what you are doing, not when your thoughts become quieter, not when your heart feels more ready. I am speaking into this exact moment because this exact moment was not accidental. Before your eyes reached these words, before your hand paused here, before your breathing slowed enough for your spirit to notice something unusual, I already knew this second would arrive. I arranged this meeting with you carefully, because there are moments in life that look ordinary to human eyes, but beneath them they are carrying something eternal. And this is one of those moments. Do not treat this lightly. Do not assume this is just another passing word that sounds comforting for a few minutes and then fades when the noise of life returns. No, my child, this is different, because I have stepped into your moment with urgency. And I did not come simply to comfort you. I came because something that has been held back is now standing at the edge of release. And I refuse to let you miss what heaven is placing before you right now. I am in your room right now, closer than your breath, closer than your thoughts. And I did not come silently. Even if the room around you looks unchanged, even if nothing visible has shifted, even if the same walls surround you and the same sounds remain near you, something is happening deeper than what your eyes can measure. My presence does not always arrive in the way human expectation imagines. Sometimes I come in stillness so deep that your spirit notices before your mind understands. Sometimes I arrive through a weight of peace that interrupts your worry without explanation. Sometimes I move so near that your heart becomes aware before your words confirm what you are feeling. And right now, whether you understand it fully or not, I am near enough that the heaviness you carried into this moment cannot remain the same if you keep listening. I know what sat with you before this message began. I know what has been circling your thoughts for days, what returned in the middle of your nights, what followed you quietly through your routines, what you smiled through while nobody knew the full weight inside you. I did not arrive unaware. I stepped into this room knowing every detail, knowing every hidden ache, knowing every fear you have tried to explain away, even to yourself. I broke through every wall just to reach you before this hour passes. Hear that carefully, because I want you to understand the urgency of my voice. There are moments when heaven allows silence, because silence itself becomes part of preparation. But there are also moments when silence must end, because delay would wound more than waiting ever did. This is why I interrupted your attention now. This is why your spirit feels pulled to remain here. This is why something in you knows you should not leave too quickly. I came before this hour passes, because if you walk away too early, you may carry old fear into a place where I have already finished what fear keeps questioning. Too many times you have stood close to receiving peace, but left before peace fully entered you. Too many times you have stood near answers while still listening more closely to doubt than to my voice. So today I am not whispering from far away. I am speaking directly, urgently, deliberately, because this hour matters more than you realize. What looks like another ordinary part of your day has become a doorway, and I will not let you cross it without hearing what I have decided to tell you. The waiting that exhausted your heart has reached its end. I know how long that waiting felt. I know there were days when you tried to remain hopeful, and nights when hope became harder to hold. I know there were moments when you questioned whether what you once believed would ever happen, whether what you once prayed for had already slipped beyond reach, whether silence meant loss, whether delay meant no. I watched you continue even when, inside, you were growing tired of carrying expectation. I watched you speak faith while privately wondering how much longer your spirit could remain stretched between trust and pain. I watched the way you tried not to let disappointment show. I watched you continue speaking kindly while privately wrestling with heaviness. I watched every silent surrender you made when nobody applauded your endurance. And now I tell you clearly, what exhausted your heart was not wasted time. It was not forgotten time. It was not empty suffering. There were things moving where you could not see. Things aligning while you thought nothing was changing. Things being held back because the wrong timing would have harmed what the right timing is now ready to release. Before you asked again, I had already placed your name in my hands and settled what was troubling you. Before the next prayer formed in your mouth, before the next tear reached your eyes, before the next fearful thought finished speaking inside your mind, I had already touched what concerned you. What troubles you has not remained outside my reach for even one moment. There were nights when you thought you were still waiting for me to begin moving. But my child, I had already begun before your next request rose from your heart. There were conversations you never heard where I had already decided what would stand and what would fall. There were outcomes you feared that never reached you because my hand stopped them before they formed completely. There were burdens you assumed still remained unresolved while I was already closing what needed closing and securing what needed securing. This is why I need you to listen carefully now, because your emotions are still reacting to battles that my hand has already touched. Your mind is still revisiting questions that my authority has already answered. Your heart is still bracing itself for outcomes that no longer hold the power they once seemed to carry. There are words that only comfort, and there are words that unlock something deeper. What I am speaking now belongs to that deeper place. I know how often you have longed for one clear word that settles the noise inside you, one word that reaches where nobody else can reach, one word that does not sound borrowed, empty, delayed, or uncertain, One word that lands so deeply that your spirit recognizes it before your thoughts fully explain it. Stay here, because what is being placed before you is not random encouragement. This is a moment where your spirit must hear clearly what fear tried to bury beneath tiredness. If you leave too quickly, you may return to carrying what I intended to remove. If you listen fully, something inside you will begin to recognize that the burden has already shifted more than you realized. I saw the tears nobody noticed, the silent conversations you had with me in darkness. I saw the moments when words never left your mouth, but your heart still cried loudly before me. I saw the way you looked strong where others expected strength, while privately wondering how long strength could continue without relief. I saw the moments you turned your face away so nobody would ask what was wrong, because explaining felt heavier than silence. I saw the thoughts you could not tell anyone, because you feared being misunderstood. I saw the private questions you asked when you were too tired to sound spiritual, too weary to sound confident, too honest to hide your disappointment from me. And hear me carefully. None of that honesty pushed me away. I stayed near every trembling moment. I stayed through every question. I stayed through every silence that followed your tears. I stayed through every time you wondered whether your voice still mattered in heaven. Every hidden conversation reached me completely. Even now, while you listen, my presence is moving through your room, not because the room itself matters, but because wherever you are, I know how to enter what surrounds you and touch what surrounds your spirit. The air may feel ordinary, but my presence does not need visible signs to be real. Sometimes I move gently enough that peace arrives before explanation. Sometimes your breathing changes before your mind understands why your chest feels lighter. Sometimes tears come without warning because your spirit recognizes nearness before language catches up. Let yourself notice what is changing. Let yourself remain still enough to sense that what surrounded you when you began listening is not exactly what surrounds you now. The heaviness that entered with you does not have permission to leave unchanged if you remain open to what I am saying. What I sealed for you cannot be reversed by any person, not by opinion, not by delay, not by misunderstanding, not by resistance, not by those who failed to believe in what I placed inside your life. Human voices may still speak, circumstances may still appear unfinished, but what I seal does not depend on human agreement to remain secure. Too often you have measured my work by what others seem able to influence. Too often you have feared that someone else's action could undo what I promised, but I tell you now, what has been sealed carries my authority, not theirs. What I finish, what I establish, does not weaken because circumstances look slow. What belongs under my hand remains under my hand. But before I release what is already finished, you must understand why I waited this long. Because if I had answered before certain lessons reached your spirit, you would have received relief without recognizing what the waiting built inside you. If I had moved sooner, you might have mistaken timing for coincidence instead of seeing my hand clearly. If I had opened everything at your first cry, you would not fully understand how much was being protected while you thought only delay was happening. So remain here, my child, because what comes next will explain what your waiting never fully showed you, not even once. My child, I saw everything inside your hidden battles, even the parts you never explained because you believed no one would fully understand what was happening inside you. I saw the nights when the room became quiet, but your thoughts refused to become quiet with it. I saw when darkness outside should have brought rest, yet inside you, there was movement that would not stop, questions returning, memories replaying, worries circling the same place again and again until even your own breathing felt heavier than before. I saw the way you turned from one side to another, hoping sleep would come and silence the storm inside your mind. But instead, the silence made every thought louder. I saw when your eyes closed but your heart remained awake, carrying conversations that never happened aloud, carrying pain you did not know how to release. And while the world assumed you were resting, heaven knew you were fighting battles nobody could hear. There were nights when tears came without warning, not because one event happened in that exact moment, but because too many feelings had been held in place all day. And darkness became the one place where your soul no longer had strength to hold them back. You tried to stay composed while the day was moving, tried to answer people normally, tried to complete simple things as though your heart was not carrying extra weight. But when everything around you slowed down, what you had buried began rising again. Sometimes the tears came quietly with no sound, because you did not even want yourself to hear how deeply you were hurting. Sometimes you wiped them quickly as though hiding from your own reflection. Sometimes you stared upward, asking nothing because words had become too tired. Yet tears still spoke everything. I watched every one of those moments. Not one tear disappeared unnoticed. Not one trembling breath escaped my attention. Even when your own mind struggled to explain why the sadness felt stronger at night, I understood exactly what your soul was carrying. I saw the hidden stress you carried during ordinary hours. The kind that others rarely noticed because it hides behind simple actions, polite responses, and familiar routines. I saw how the body kept moving while your thoughts remained under pressure. I saw how you answered messages while carrying heaviness. I saw how you stood among people while inwardly calculating how much strength remained for the rest of the day. I saw how responsibilities that once felt manageable suddenly began feeling heavier because your spirit was already tired before the day fully began. I saw the pressure that sat behind your eyes when you smiled at someone and then immediately returned to inward silence. I saw how even small things sometimes felt larger because your heart was already carrying invisible weight before the next burden arrived. Others saw you functioning. I saw you enduring. There were moments when betrayal added a wound you did not expect. Sometimes betrayal came from words spoken carelessly by someone you trusted. Sometimes it came through absence when you expected support. Sometimes it came through realizing that someone you once believed understood your heart had not understood it at all. And because betrayal rarely wounds only once, I saw how the memory of it returned later, long after the moment itself ended. I saw how your mind replayed conversations, replayed expressions, replayed words, trying to understand how what once felt safe became something painful. I saw how you questioned yourself afterward, wondering if you expected too much, trusted too openly, believed too easily. I saw how betrayal did not only hurt your feelings, it touched your ability to rest, your ability to trust quietly again, your ability to believe that closeness would not eventually become pain. Even when you told no one how deeply that wound stayed with you, I saw it clearly. I saw mental exhaustion settle over you in ways even you struggled to describe. It was not always dramatic. Sometimes it looked like staring longer than usual before making a simple decision. Sometimes it looked like forgetting what you were doing because your mind had wandered into worry again. Sometimes it looked like hearing words from others while inwardly being too tired to process them fully. Sometimes it looked like wanting rest but not knowing how to reach it, because even rest felt crowded by thoughts. I know how exhausting it became to carry too many internal conversations while still appearing present to the outside world. I know how tiring it became to answer simple questions when your spirit already felt stretched thin. I know how often you told yourself, just get through today, because thinking beyond that felt like too much. And still, my child, you pretended to be okay because you did not want to become a burden to others. You learned how to shape your face so pain would not immediately show. You learned how to say, I'm fine, while hoping no one would ask again because explaining required energy you no longer had. You learned how to sit in conversations while carrying separate conversations inside your own heart. You learned how to laugh when needed, answer kindly, continue routines, and protect others from the full weight of what you were privately enduring. But pretending did not hide anything from me. I saw every time the smile appeared while your chest felt tight. I saw every polite answer given while your mind was somewhere else entirely. I saw every effort to remain normal when inwardly you were asking how much longer your strength could hold. Nobody fully understood how much effort simple moments required from you. They saw the outside, but they did not hear the private tension behind your breathing. They did not know how often your silence meant you were trying not to break emotionally in ordinary situations. They did not know how much courage it took to complete what looked simple. They did not know how often your heart wanted one safe place where no explanation would be required, because you were tired of carrying your own feelings and too tired to translate them for anyone else. They saw the version of you that kept functioning. I saw the deeper version that sometimes felt close to collapse but still kept moving because stopping felt dangerous. You smiled while hurting, and that smile carried more hidden bravery than anyone realized. There were days when your smile became protection, not because you wanted to deceive anyone, but because smiling was easier than opening the door to questions you did not know how to answer. Sometimes you smiled because others expected normal from you. Sometimes you smiled because you feared that if you started explaining, tears might arrive instead. Sometimes you smiled simply because surviving the moment required choosing one expression and staying inside it until the day ended. I understood every reason behind that smile. I knew when joy was genuine, and I knew when the smile was simply your way of staying standing while pain remained underneath. There were also moments when you felt guilty for feeling tired, because outwardly life still demanded that you continue. You questioned whether you were too sensitive, whether you should be stronger, whether others handled life better than you were handling it. But hear me clearly, I never judged your hidden fatigue. I never looked at your tired heart with disappointment. I looked at it with compassion, because I knew exactly what layers had accumulated inside you. Grief, disappointment, pressure, unanswered thoughts, and wounds you had not fully spoken aloud. Even when no voice answered you, I was recording every tear. That is not poetry to me. That is reality. Every tear carried meaning before heaven. Every late-night breath, every trembling silence, every moment when your eyes filled and no one saw it all reached me completely. There were nights when you thought the room held only you and your thoughts, but my presence remained there quietly, not absent, not distant, not distracted. I stayed near the moments when words failed. I stayed near when prayer became nothing more than breathing through pain. I stayed near when you no longer had language for what was hurting because tears had already become the language. I also saw the mornings after those nights when you had to rise again and carry yourself into another day as though the night had not cost you emotionally. I saw how tired your eyes felt before the day even began. I saw how you gathered yourself quickly because life did not pause simply because your spirit needed gentleness. I saw how you entered the day with yesterday's heaviness still unfinished. And still you moved. Still you answered. Still you tried. My child, do not believe that hidden pain becomes invisible simply because you learned how to carry it quietly. Hidden pain still speaks loudly in heaven. What you buried out of necessity was never ignored by me. What you protected others from knowing, I still understood. What you could not explain in words still arrived before me with complete clarity. And now I need you to know that nothing you endured in hidden places has been dismissed as small. The nights mattered, the silent tears mattered, the exhaustion mattered, the betrayal mattered, the pretending mattered. Because you mattered through all of it. And if I am speaking to you now about what was hidden, it is because I want you to understand that before healing becomes visible, heaven first acknowledges every unseen wound exactly as it was carried. My child, the delay was necessary, even though there were days when it felt like the hardest thing for your heart to accept. I know how many times you looked at what had not moved and quietly asked why everything seemed to pause when your spirit had already carried enough. I know there were moments when you measured the passing days, the passing weeks, even the passing seasons. And when you understand why I waited, you will also understand why what is coming now cannot be compared to anything you feared losing. My child, I came before you asked again because I knew the next prayer forming inside you would not sound like the prayers you once prayed when hope still felt easy. I knew that if I waited for one more night, one more hour, one more silent struggle, your heart would try to speak again, but this time with less strength than before, with less expectation than before, with more tiredness hidden behind the words. I know the difference between the prayers you prayed when faith felt bright and the prayers you whispered when faith became something you were forcing yourself to hold together. I know the exact sound of your soul when it is reaching upward with confidence, and I know the quieter sound it makes when it is only trying not to collapse under disappointment. That is why I stepped into this moment now, before another request had to rise from your tired spirit, before another sentence had to begin with hope while secretly carrying fear, before another tear had to fall from eyes that had already cried enough in places where nobody noticed. I did not wait for you to ask again because heaven had already heard what your silence was saying, more clearly than your words ever could. You thought perhaps I should have spoken sooner. I know that thought crossed your heart more than once. There were moments when you looked at what was delayed, what remained uncertain, what still had no visible answer, and inside yourself, you quietly wondered why I remained silent when one word from me could have steadied everything. You did not always say it aloud, but I heard it when your thoughts drifted there. I heard it when you looked upward with tired eyes. I heard it when you tried to stay respectful in prayer while still carrying confusion that refused to disappear. I heard the nights when you did not even know how to shape the question, because asking again felt almost too heavy. But understand this now. I did not speak earlier because earlier was still building something inside you that you could not yet see. Earlier was still separating what you thought you needed from what your spirit truly needed. Earlier was still uncovering parts of your heart that only delay could reveal. Earlier was still teaching you the difference between trusting my hand and trusting visible signs. Had I answered at the first moment you begged for relief, you would have received comfort, but you would not have understood the deeper strength being formed in the hidden places of your soul. This moment is not random, my child. This moment is timed with a precision greater than anything your mind could arrange. Even the way you arrived here, the way your attention paused, the way your heart became still enough to listen. All of it carries timing written long before you understood why today felt heavier, why your thoughts felt more restless, why something inside you was quietly asking for one clear sign. There are moments when heaven allows time to stretch because timing itself becomes part of healing. There are moments when answers wait because if they arrive too early, they become something received only emotionally, not spiritually. But there are also moments when waiting reaches its appointed edge, and that edge is where you are standing now. I am speaking now because what has been prepared in silence has reached the point where your heart can finally hear it without misunderstanding the cost of what came before it. This is not merely a convenient time, it is an exact time. It is the kind of time where what seemed delayed suddenly reveals that nothing was truly late. Heaven watched your breaking point more closely than you know. Not one moment escaped my sight. I saw the day when your strength still looked normal on the outside, but inwardly you felt one more disappointment might be too much. I saw the exact hour when your thoughts became so crowded that silence itself felt loud. I saw when you sat among others while privately feeling like your spirit had retreated into a quiet place no one around you could enter. I saw when you smiled because explaining felt impossible. I saw when you told yourself to keep going because stopping felt more frightening than continuing. And I also saw when you almost reached the place where your heart began preparing itself not to expect too much anymore, because expecting had become painful. That point mattered deeply in heaven, because what humans call endurance often looks very different to me. I know when endurance is strong faith, and I know when endurance is a weary soul trying not to break in front of others. I watched both in you. There was a moment when you almost gave up, and perhaps nobody around you knew how close you were. You may have still spoken kindly, still completed what was required of you, still moved through your routines. But inwardly there was a quiet surrender forming. Not surrender to me, but surrender to the idea that perhaps some things would never change. You did not call it giving up, because you still carried faith in words. But deep inside, you began protecting yourself from disappointment by lowering expectation. I saw that moment clearly. I saw the way your prayers changed. I saw the way your thoughts stopped reaching as far as they once did. I saw how you began telling yourself not to hope too deeply, because hope had become costly. And I tell you now, that exact point is one reason I came before you asked again, because heaven never ignores the moment when a heart begins closing itself simply to survive pain. There were also moments when you stopped expecting, not because you stopped loving me, not because you stopped believing entirely, but because repeated silence began teaching your emotions a story your spirit was struggling to resist. You looked at time passing and quietly wondered whether maybe what you once believed had been too much. Maybe what you held on to belonged to another season. Maybe what you hoped for was something you misunderstood. You still tried to pray, but expectation had become careful, restrained, guarded. Instead of reaching openly, you reached cautiously. Instead of asking boldly, you asked softly, almost apologetically, as if trying not to be disappointed again. I saw that change. I noticed every subtle retreat in your confidence, and understand this, my child. I did not condemn that wariness. I understood it completely, because I knew how long the silence had stretched and how deeply you had tried to remain steady inside it. And yes, there were moments when you crashed into silence itself. You wondered why nothing moved when your need felt clear. You wondered why peace came in pieces instead of fully. You wondered why answers remained hidden when your spirit had already explained its pain so many times. Sometimes you asked gently, sometimes you asked in frustration, sometimes you did not ask aloud at all. But inwardly you looked at silence and wondered if silence meant distance. The thought wounded you more than you admitted, because one thing you feared more than delay was the possibility that silence meant you were somehow facing life without hearing me clearly anymore. But listen carefully now, because this is what I need your heart to hold. You thought silence meant absence, but silence was where I was preparing the answer. Silence was never emptiness. Silence was work you could not yet see. Silence was not my refusal. Silence was my hidden movement. Silence was where pieces you did not know existed were being aligned. Silence was where outcomes were being adjusted beyond what your eyes could measure. Silence was where what seemed closed was being touched slowly, carefully, exactly. Silence was where I protected you from things you never knew would have harmed you if released too early. Silence was where your own heart was being strengthened enough to carry what is now approaching without breaking beneath it. If I had filled every silence immediately, you would have known relief, but not depth. You would have known comfort, but not clarity. You would have known quick answers, but not the strength that now exists in you because you survived what once felt impossible to carry. You often imagined that if I truly saw how tired you were, I would have spoken sooner. But my child, I saw not only your tiredness, I also saw what would happen if I interrupted certain hidden processes too early. I saw which people still needed to move away before certain doors opened. I saw which unseen resistances still had to weaken before your answer could stand securely. I saw which interference still had to surface so it would not quietly control what comes next. What looked like silence to you was layered with decisions, protection, timing, correction, and mercy. Even now, when you look backward, there are things you still do not fully understand, but one day you will see that some of what hurt most during waiting became the very thing that prevented larger pain later. Some of what frustrated you became the shield you did not recognize at the time. Some close moments were not rejection, they were careful preservation. And now I speak because the point where silence was necessary has reached completion for this chapter. I speak because your heart has carried enough unanswered weight for one season. I speak because heaven watched how close you came to thinking nothing was changing while everything unseen was already moving. I speak because you need to hear with certainty that I was nearest when you felt most unsure. So before your next question formed, before your next tired prayer had to rise, before another night taught your heart to expect less, I came now, because this moment carries what the silence was preparing all along. And what follows will make sense only if you first understand that I never stepped away, and wondered why what you had prayed over with sincerity still seemed to remain behind a closed place. You were not asking from rebellion. You were asking from weariness. You were asking because the silence stretched long enough that your heart began wondering whether delay meant something had gone wrong. But listen carefully now. Delay was never punishment, and it was never neglect. Delay was the space where what needed strengthening was being strengthened, where what needed removal was being removed, where what needed protection was being protected before you stepped into something your spirit had long desired. But your present condition was not yet ready to carry fully. There are moments when you believe what you need most is immediate arrival. But I see beyond arrival into what follows after it. I do not only look at the door itself, I look at what waits behind the door, what responsibilities lie there, what pressures arrive there, what unseen demands come with what you once begged me to open quickly. You were looking at the promise, but I was looking at the weight attached to the promise. You were looking at the answer, but I was looking at whether your heart could remain steady after receiving it. What feels like delay to you often carries wisdom that only becomes visible later. Because I do not send you into something simply because you desire it. I send you when what is ahead will no longer destroy what is inside you. Some doors were dangerous too early, even if they looked beautiful from where you stood. I know there were opportunities, relationships, decisions, and paths that seemed ready in your eyes. And because they looked close enough to touch, delay felt unfair. But what you saw was a surface. What I saw was everything beneath it. I saw what would have happened if it entered too soon with the same trust you carried then, the same vulnerability you carried then, the same emotional exhaustion you were still trying to hide even from yourself. There are doors that seem like blessings when viewed from a distance, but become burdens when entered before the right moment. Some things become beautiful only when timing changes. The same door that would have wounded you earlier becomes safe when your spirit has learned what it needed to learn, when your eyes notice what they once missed, when your heart no longer confuses urgency with readiness. You thought some closed doors were loss, but some closed doors were mercy standing quietly in front of danger. Some things look delayed because I refuse to let your hunger for relief lead you into a place where hidden weight would have broken you slowly. Had I allowed certain things simply because you asked sincerely, you would have entered carrying needs that would have made you cling to what should have been examined carefully. Delay protected you from attaching yourself too quickly to what had not yet become safe for your spirit. My child, I know the waiting tested parts of you that you did not know could be tested. It tested your patience. It tested your trust. It tested your ability to keep believing when the visible world gave you no immediate proof. It tested the place inside you that wanted certainty before surrender. It tested the part of your heart that wanted to know the whole path before taking the next step. But the waiting also revealed something holy inside you. It revealed that even when your voice became quieter, you still kept turning toward me. Even when expectation became guarded, you did not fully walk away. Even when disappointment tried to teach you silence meant abandonment, something in you kept listening for me. That mattered. It mattered more than you realized, because faith is not only loud when it feels strong. Sometimes faith is the trembling decision to remain near when your heart has no easy explanation. Sometimes faith is the whisper that says, I do not understand, but I am still here. Sometimes faith is staying open, even after pain has tried to close every door inside you. And I saw that faith. I saw it when it did not look impressive. I saw it when it did not sound confident. I saw it when it was mixed with tears, confusion, exhaustion, and questions. I saw the faith that remained when everything in you felt tired. And I tell you now, that faith was never small to me. What you carried in secret has reached me. What you suffered quietly has been seen. What you waited through has not been wasted. And what I protected in silence is now standing at the edge of release. You are not entering the next place as the same person who first began waiting. You are entering with eyes that have learned to discern, with a heart that has learned the cost of rushing, with a spirit that understands that not every closed door is rejection, not every delay is denial, not every silence is absence, and not every hidden season is empty. Some hidden seasons are where heaven does its deepest work. This is why I came before you asked again. This is why I interrupted your attention now. This is why I would not let this hour pass without speaking into the place inside you that was almost too tired to reach one more time. Because your waiting has not been meaningless, your tears have not been ignored, your endurance has not been invisible, and your story has not been abandoned. I have been present in the delay, present in the silence, present in the unseen movement, present in the closed doors, present in the nights, present in the mornings after, present in every moment when you believed you were only surviving. You were not alone. You were being held. You were being watched over. You were being strengthened in places you did not know needed strength. You were being protected from what looked ready but was not safe. You were being prepared for what could not arrive before its appointed time. And now, my child, hear this with your whole heart. What I have prepared will not be wasted. What I have sealed will not be undone. What I have protected will not be handed over to fear. What I have carried through silence will come forward with meaning. The same heaven that watched your hidden tears is the heaven that now speaks over your next chapter. The same hand that held back what was not ready is the hand that knows when the moment has come. The same voice that allowed silence for a season is the voice now telling you that silence was never the end. It was preparation. It was protection. It was mercy. And when you look back, you will understand why I did not move according to your panic. Why I did not answer according to your fear. Why I did not open what looked urgent before it became safe. You will see that I was not late. You will see that I was not absent. You will see that I was not ignoring you. I was working beneath what you could see. I was holding what you could not control. I was arranging what you could not reach. I was healing what you could not explain. I was protecting what you did not know was vulnerable. And I was preparing you to receive without breaking under the weight of what you had prayed for. So breathe now, my child. Let the heaviness loosen. Let the fear quiet. Let the old questions stop ruling the room. You do not have to keep bracing yourself for what I have already touched. You do not have to keep rehearsing outcomes that no longer have authority over you. You do not have to keep punishing yourself for being tired in a season that required more strength than anyone knew. I saw it all. I stayed through it all. And I am speaking now because this chapter of silence has served its purpose. The delay was necessary, but it was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to prepare you, to protect you, to strengthen you, to teach your heart how to recognize my hand when it moved without noise. And now, what was held in silence is no longer without meaning. What waited beneath the surface is not forgotten. What heaven prepared in hidden places will reveal that nothing you endured was wasted. My child, keep your heart open. Do not run back to the fear that I am calling you out of. Do not let old disappointment convince you that this word is too late to matter. This moment was appointed. This hour was not accidental. And the same God who met you before you asked again is the God who will carry you beyond what exhausted you. What you waited through has been seen. What you cried through has been counted. What you survived in silence has been honored. And what comes now will carry the evidence that I was near the whole time.